Jacob, we've been doing podcasts and videos and all sorts of stuff for many years now. I mean, I literally interviewed you, if you remember, in Amsterdam when we were shooting the documentary series that we were doing for Startups Unedited. We've been friends for a while. It's interesting because, you meet international friends, in this digital world, but like we've literally hung out in person multiple times. How are you?
Yeah, yeah, I'm really good. I mean, as you can tell, I'm here in right now. I'm in the obviously sunny part of southern Denmark, and just here for a while, working from here. So meeting some clients, and but I've been good. I think you and I have been actually kicking it off for the past, say, 10 years. So I think it's been a decade. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been quite a while. I know I remember, you were one of the like, you know, sales experts that was in the technology industry, and I would say like one of the top international voices in sales technology. And I remember saying, I got to meet this guy. And I remember we did that event at WeWork. Do you remember that? With I forgot the fella's name, but it was myself, and I'm blanking on his name.
That's probably with
John.
John. Yeah,
Yeah,
John
with
was
John.
definitely.
Yeah, John's last name is what I'm blanking on. But anyways, a great guy. I know he was
Woodruff.
from Woodruff. Yes.
Yeah, from Two Tone.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah,
That's
he's
right. We had
awesome.
a
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. He was a great guy. He loved bikes, if you remember.
He loves bikes. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think that's ever gonna go away.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people in Amsterdam really love bikes. I love bikes, by the way. And it was one of the things that was really cool about the Bay Area too, and the sort of, overlap, I think, in culture uh with Amsterdam was like everyone rode bikes, but certainly not to the level that Amsterdam. I've never seen that before. But anyways,
It is
um,
unique. Yeah.
right? It's pretty awesome. But yeah, why don't you tell folks a little bit about, just quickly, a little bit about your, career background, and, how you get into, tech sales.
Look, I've been actually in tech sales since my very first sales job, which happened by coincidence. But I was just one day asked to, answer the phone if customers interested in video conferencing equipment would call over at the rather large Danish telecommunications company I was working for at the time, and just answering the phone. That sort of morphed into, okay, so now that you have them on the phone, and just in case they want to see the software, can you show them? And maybe you can also go out to them with this hardware equipment. Back then, we are in the sort of middle of the 90s, and back then, video conferencing equipment had was run on gigantic. There were no flat screen TVs at the time, right? So it was like back your old fashioned huge TVs that go out to customers with a car full of TVs, and the all the equipment required to run video conferencing over a couple of ISDN lines, and then try to show them how that worked. Yeah, that was so that was my very first tech sales job, and since then it's just been video conferencing, it's been telecommunications, networking, anything through the entire tech stack, or I should say the OC, through the entire OSI model, uh, from the top to the bottom and back again. And yeah, and then sometime in the early 2000s, of course, software as a service came around, and I started looking at software as a service uh, for the first time seriously at Cisco,
Mm.
uh, when based in Amsterdam, and then increasingly worked more with SaaS, and joined LogMeIn when it
Hmm.
was not as large as it is now. So just a couple of hundred employees, I think, at the time. And stayed with LogMeIn for, I think, 4 years, and then started Your Sales, where I help SaaS companies with sales growth anywhere in the world, and that's been the past 10 years, and it's actually, it's of course part of that. under that umbrella that I met you and John and all of these other great people who work a lot with SaaS.
Yeah, I'm feeling guilty that I blanked on John's last name, given that he was a friend. Just in case he hears this episode, sorry about that, John.
You never run around. You don't go around asking titulating your friends by family name, do you? So
Yeah, good point. Well, you've been as you communicated and I think people know, you've been a sales expert for many years. How have you seen specifically enablement and that space evolve over the years? And, kind of, if you were to sort of think about the biggest challenges that sales leaders face around equipping their team for success, what are some of the things that come to mind?
I think the biggest challenge that sales leaders face probably is that they don't know where to start. So the first, they don't know what is out there. And second is they don't know where to start, right? So they have no idea what technology is available to solve the kinds of problems they have in their sales teams. And they also don't necessarily have, they don't have data on what the biggest problems in their sales teams are. They can have anecdotal evidence most of the time, but also most of the time they actually don't have any kind of data. So they have to use anecdotal evidence to prioritize the kinds of problems and solutions and investment in solutions. And that's really, really challenging. And if you combine that with not knowing what's out there, it becomes pretty tricky to really start using tech in sales, don't you think? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's really, I spoke to somebody yesterday and we were just sitting down talking through their sales process, and their sales process looks great. And then he says, yeah, but these salespeople, we know what we need to do in order to go through our sales process. And then I go, okay, so what CRM do you use, and what kind of data do you have on on the decisions that you make? And he goes, well, we're using spreadsheets for the whole thing. And I go, what? Because that's just the basic. That's just so, I mean, at the core of almost every single sales tech stack, you have a CRM that solves the problems that sales leaders expect of that, and then you build everything else around that, and around what your customers need to buy.
Mm. If you were to think about issues that you've seen sales teams encounter when it comes specifically to getting the right sales collateral for their motions, what are some of those sort of pieces that come to mind for you?
Yeah. So on sales collateral specifically, there are a bunch of challenges, right? So first of all, you got to come up with it at some point. The sales collateral that you have ready is not necessarily tweaked to the part of the sales process that you're in. Mm-hmm. Sure, you may have brochures that you can send, and they may even be digital, right? So PDFs that you can send over, but they're not necessarily tweaked to the part of the sales process that you're in. Mm-hmm. That they don't necessarily help at that specific stage of your sales process or the customer's buyer's journey, for that matter. And so you're working off a very generic material. Then in addition, some of that material will be in the form of PDFs, and some of it will be PowerPoints, and some of it will not fit. At least some salespeople will have the idea that it doesn't quite fit with what their customer wants from them. There's some issues around multilingual sales departments where you may not be able to just get away with sending out an English version. And then what you see happening then is that salespeople start hacking away at the content in order to make it fit with their specific.
Going rogue is what I keep hearing. Yeah,
they're going rogue. They're creating sort of shadow marketing, right? And it doesn't work. Salespeople are not meant to sit and edit content. They're supposed to use that content to help customers buy. They're supposed to be in dialogue with customers that have problems that that they can solve. And the problem is the biggest challenge is, how do you get that content into the hands of salespeople and enable them to send it out to customers really easily, and then know what happens afterwards, right? And you don't know, right? If you send a PDF or a PowerPoint, you just have no idea. First of all, you have no idea really what works and what doesn't, because you won't have any data on how much was viewed, where did customers exit the document, and that you just don't know. And that means for a sales team that you can be sending out, you can continue sending out content that literally, first of all, destroys internal productivity, because the salespeople have to recreate this content over and over and over again. But in addition, it can kill the sales process, because there are bits and pieces in that content that scares customers away, and you will never know. And that's frightening. So that seems like it. Getting rid of PDFs and PowerPoint seems like a pretty good idea.
Yeah. I've never heard it. And by the way, at Asset Mule, we have done, almost a little under 200 interviews with sales leaders and product marketers and so on, sales reps as well, over the last couple months. And what you just communicated, which it was, there are bits and pieces of information within that collateral that will scare prospects away. I've never heard that communicated, and it's so true.
But
right?
It's true, right? Because, there may be, imagine that you have a little piece. Imagine that you're a new company and you're selling new technology XYZ to customers who've never bought that kind of technology before. These customers may vary in size, or they may be from different industries, but either way, because you're new and selling new technology, buying from you is risky. And so if you have language in your content that communicates that there's risk involved with buying from you, then that in and of itself can scare customers away. And so that is something that you want to avoid. You want to try to see if you can turn it around, make sure that your content exudes confidence in the procurement decision that these people are about to make, right? So references, use cases, and anything that says that you've done this hundreds of times before, and you're backed by super mega amounts of capital and whatnot, right? So if you are anyway, so just got to think about what's being written. If you see in your content that is not being read, let's say you're using a platform to make sure to send content out to customers, so you can see how much has actually been read, and you see that customers are disengaging from page X, then that may be a sign that you need to go in and review that page and see what's going on.
That really sort of, for me, makes me think about, well, what are the pieces of copy or messaging, or even just the type of sales collateral that maybe work for smaller, more transactional sales versus, larger, let's say mid-market or enterprise sales. Like any sort of distinctions there that you've seen?
I think some of the distinctions are that you can close a transactional sale using more transactional language, and I'm talking about, close the deal now if you want X% of discount, or close the deal now and cancel it within the next 30 days. And they may work in enterprise sales as well, but they particularly are well suited for transactional sales. Because in consultative sales, in enterprise sales, it's just way more. There's a greater degree of trust building. We're dealing with longer processes, more legal mumbo jumbo enters into the sales process. That in fact you may want to make part of your collateral as well, so that you can communicate more fully to customers about it and provide them more fully everything that they need in order to buy. Right? It's just when you're buying larger deals, there are more people involved, and there's more there are more legal hurdles you need to clear in order to finally arrive at a customer that buys and a company that sells, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned the CRM earlier and how you've spoken to leaders out there and they're just like, oh, we use spreadsheets, and you're going like, how do you actually do that right now? And that the CRM is basically the foundational piece of the tech stack,
Yeah.
which, I obviously I'm, on board with you there. It's kind of like, not being able to drive a car because you don't have, for me it's the wheels on the car, right? Like you have to have it. I mean, I guess, if I'm looking at sort of a different perspective, I guess you could get by to an extent without the spreadsheet or without the CRM and using a spreadsheet. But you're not really going to you're not going to get too far. I think I've always said, okay, at day one, you can use a spreadsheet if it's just you by yourself to kind of model out what those fields and, steps in the CRM might, eventually be. But at some point you got to get there, right? To hit any kind of scale. If you were to think about the modern day sales stack and what it should consist of right now in 2023, given sort of everything that we've experienced in SaaS the last 2 years, given that, CFOs and leaders are really thinking about how to keep things lean at the moment. What are those sort of different slices or components that are just must-haves right now?
That's a big question.
Yeah,
it's a big question, right? Because there's just so many. I don't think that it's changed so much over the past decade. Largely, salespeople do the same things, have the same problems they need to address and bases they need to cover. But some of those tools have gone digital, and of course, one of the things that I think has a couple of the things that have had the biggest impact for good or worse, for better or for worse, is that we have now schedulers that with a little link that you can send to someone and they can schedule time in your calendar. I think that is probably for the better. We have sales engagement tools that enable you to send email sequences out to customers. That is not necessarily for the better, because you end up companies easily end up doing the same as all the other companies. And what you want to do, especially when you're in a lead generation, when you're going through your lead generation process, is you want to try to stand out and be like preferably one in a million, so that your customer will forever remember you, right? And so because they may not buy from you right now, but if you do things right, when they have the problem that you can solve. And so email sequencing tools are not necessarily right for that. And there's definitely an argument that you could consider to take part of the certainly parts of the lead generation process manual. There's also a debate about whether you should call customers or not. Again, I don't think that I'm going to weigh in on that debate, but except to say that you should do whatever makes you stand out and is legal and ethically defensible, right?
Very good point.
But make sure to stand out in the right kind of way, so that customers remember you, start trusting you, and can eventually buy from you. I think is the most important part. So there's sales engagement tools. There's email sequences. There's a lot of automation. A lot of workflow automation has been created. I think first probably with Zapier, and then later on has sort of made its way to various degrees into different kinds of CRM tools. And there's a lot of automation now that is designed to make salespeople's days easier and to give them more facing time. So I think that's important. It's important to try to make use of it. And then there are all of these sort of in various industries, experimental tools, things like using video for outreach, using video for newsletters, personalized videos, using different kinds of AI to personalize bits and pieces of your communication stream, or just simply make it easier. Right now, over on the Your Sales website, I'm using a chatbot which is completely based on AI, and it's working pretty well.
Oh, I gotta check that out.
Yeah, go have some fun. And and it's just interesting to see where that's going to take us.
Yeah.
And whether customers will eventually recognize that, oh, I'm chatting with a bot and I don't want that, or they recognize they're chatting with a bot and they say, okay, this is smart. This saves time for me and for the company I'm trying to get in touch with. I'm getting timely responses. And so this is good until I need to speak to a human, right? So it's interesting to see where that goes. Then
Absolutely.
we have LinkedIn automation, and yeah, that's just, look, man, I think there's, I mean, we obviously have tools like Asset Mule that have taken everything that used to be PDF and PowerPoints and have really made it digital, right? I mean, I think if we had, I don't know so much about PowerPoint or slides for that matter, but PDF. Look, if anybody had now sat down and said, we want to create a digital form of documentation that we can send out to customers, then nobody in their right minds would have come up with PDF, right? Nobody. So instead, they would have come up with something that was more web-like and could more easily be shared with proper tracking, with maybe engagement options and so on and so forth, which you don't have with PDF. I mean, you can include a URL in PDF, but that's about the limit of it. And unless that's a really smart URL, you can't track a thing. So, yeah.
You know, what's interesting is that prospects that we speak to, or, you know, at the stage that we're in right now, where, you know, we have a set of design partners that we've been working with. So I should not call them prospects. You know, hopefully they turn into at some point customers, but, you know, either way, we're seeing a lot of value from getting feedback from them to, you know, refine the product and so on. But, you know, we're still hearing like, hey, can we like download this to PDF, right? Or export this to PowerPoint? And, you know, we'll explain that, you know, you don't get all the tracking, all the analytics and insights that we've discussed here today. But, you know, they're like, yeah, but, you know, we still, our prospect doesn't want that or whatever. So, you know, it's still something that we have on our roadmap now, just because we've literally heard it, you know, 50 times or whatever, from 50 different stakeholders that we've interviewed throughout this research process. So it's interesting that people still want to kind of like hold on to kind of the old school. And I get it, right? I get certain use cases where maybe they sell to an industry that just prefers to have that hard copy on their computer kind of thing. So I get that.
Wait though, because I don't get that. And I don't agree with it either. Most of the time when I hear sales teams object to a new form of doing business, and they hide behind, but customers want to do blah, 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 right? But they don't know, because they never asked their customers whether it would be okay to do business in a particular other way. What they are is the sales teams is they are hiding their fear of change behind saying the customers prefer, right?
Yeah.
And you get that with doing business remotely. Yeah, but customers prefer to create a relationship. They prefer if we come around. They prefer blah, blah, blah. The question is not what they prefer, even if I think they don't even know the answer to that. The question is really, what do customers need? What must they have to buy to enable fixing their problem through acquiring some sort of solution from an external company? And if that's the question, And if you put that question to the potential buyer, I am not convinced that they say, I'm not going to buy if I can't download PDF.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm with you, obviously.
It's ridiculous.
It's interesting how people would just stick to their old, antiquated, maybe not as efficient workflows because of fear or discomfort around change, right?
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
it's
we
only
see
in
that
the
all the
mind.
time.
It's only perceived. It's not founded in anything else than assumptions about buyer behavior.
Mm. Speaking of inside sales, because a lot of
Yeah.
these tools now have been really sort of birthed from the world of inside sales that you and I have, been part of for the last, 20 years or so, right?
Yeah.
If you were to think about, gosh, just how to keep people motivated and inspired with remote, you are the expert at that, right? Like, you've built all this infrastructure with your sales over the last decade or so, and you've really perfected it. But I know that a lot of organizations, especially the organizations that were pushed into remote work because of all the global pandemic stuff and whatever shenanigans over the last couple years, they were sort of pushed in that position. Maybe they didn't know how to do it. And even the ones that I think had some experience, they weren't really ready for it. I mean, we've really seen a lot of different, I don't want to call it trends because they're not trends. Yeah, I suppose that they're trends from a technical perspective, but I think it's much more important to look at it as these issues that we really have to kind of deal with as leaders. Mental health. Now, part of that is what we were dealing with as a species here the last couple of years, right? So that definitely impacted. But I think that these are things that we need to consider and not really understand as leaders, that maybe leaders that didn't think about that in the past. How is this actually affecting my rep? But a lot of the times, at least when I grew up in sales, it was about camaraderie with your team and those dynamics, which are obviously like done online as well, but it's a little different when you're not in the sales pit, making cold calls right next to your, to your colleague, when you can right? You can just look around and go, oh, get motivated, right? You have to have, I think, at least my opinion is, you have to have a more mindful and mentally disciplined rep when they're at home by themselves alone all day, and they can slack off and go and play Xbox, right? But no, they're not. They're going to stay disciplined and adhere to their schedule. So from your perspective, given that you're really an expert in this, how do you keep people motivated and inspired and productive in this remote environment?
Yeah, so first of all, people are people, and I think you got to bring people together from time to time, and the specific intervals is up. That's up for debate. You got to do it a couple of times a year at least, just to make sure that they know each other. There are people that say that to do creative work properly, you got to meet up. I'm not so convinced about that specifically. I think working virtually requires a lot of coaching on listening skills and open communication and specific communication, because where in the physical setting, sometimes you'll have a situation where people misunderstand each other, and because of visual clues, because of body language, they're able to pick up on things that are out of whack. The body language says A, but the words say B. What do you mean, right? And it's tougher to pick up on when you're in a video call, and even more difficult when you're just on the phone. Like a lot of inside sales they both have video calls, but they also have a lot of phone calls. And so you have the same thing when it's just when you're doing intra team communication, speaking with a colleague or your manager, speaking with your reps and so forth. And you gotta start. I think it's super important that we start to focus on those communication skills to really hone them to be able to communicate remotely. Now, for both reps and managers, it's very, very important to over communicate on progress. For the manager, it's important because you want to motivate your reps, and for the reps, it's important because if they want to manage their career properly, I think it's important for them to manage up. So to start managing their managers' expectations by setting milestones for themselves, and start communicating to their manager. They're pushing for, yes, of course, they're pushing to meet whatever helps the manager look good, but they're pushing above and beyond that, so that the manager knows that here's someone who manages their business and who I can show off to the rest of the team as a model to follow, and also show off to sort of my own manager to show what kind of good folks I have in my team. So in both ways, up or down the chain of command, it's important to over communicate so that you know rather more than less about how people are doing. And then finally, I think, that's just critical. Communication is everything.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, I feel like we could really spend a lot of time talking into this topic and really digging into the nuances of how to do this properly. I think there are, several layers there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. There's so many things that, I think sometimes they are marginalized, but sales kickoffs are now more important than ever. They're definitely one of the things you don't want to say. They really in some scenarios, they're really the glue of the sales team, makes people bond, and they still work once people are back in the office, right? I still hear from the last sales kickoff I was on with a client months and months ago, I still hear people talking about it, and they're still referring back to that event. And so and I have some of my own colleagues from way back from my LogMeIn days, but LogMeIn was really good at this as well. From my LogMeIn days, we still refer back to the sales kickoffs that we were on together, and the fun we had, and the good things we did, and whatnot. So that's
those human relationships, so important, totally. Right?
They still last. Yeah.
What a shock.
Yeah.
Especially in the world of AI and automation, right? It's almost like this returning to our humanity.
Look, we gotta do the things that are uniquely human and focus on what it is we do that cannot be replicated by automation, and then do more of that, and let the automation do all the easily repetitive stuff.
Yeah,
I think, because that's how we find out what it is that we're uniquely good at, and it's also a way for us to just keep sort of automation in its corner and have it do repetitive stuff. I think there's good reason to believe that we don't necessarily want to have AI do everything for us.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
Yeah, and in sales, often the way especially in enterprise sales, the way that deals are won is by focusing on the things that are uniquely human. It's the trust and the relationship build, and making sure to comfort people in taking risk and whatnot. And so this is all, even though there are plenty of solutions that have tried to take that out of buying and of selling, it's still very much a human effort to both buy and to sell. And so, and I think that's good news, certainly for sellers for the time being.
Certainly. Yeah, until the robots take over. Then we got to go to Mars with Elon, right?
But they do, right? They do in transactional sales, right? What happens in transactional sales all the time is that the bar gets lifted for the amounts and the quantities and complexities that you can buy. I above and under which you can buy from a bot. So you can increasingly buy for higher and higher amounts off of a website, helped out by a chat engine, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as sellers, if you're a sales professional, whether you're a sales leader or you're an individual contributor, you gotta move in direction of more complex and more expensive stuff to sell, because it's where the future lies for salespeople. The rest is going to be taken over. There's not going to be anything left over the next 10 years for people who want to sell transactional.
Well,
it's all going.
Well, speaking of the sort of transactional sale, and I think the AI, what do you think is going to be the longer term implication of AI in terms of how we do, let's say, outbound prospecting? And do you think that outbound prospecting is going to be really drastically changed, or are we going to still need the human in that process? And how do you find that balance, right, between the, like you articulated, the tasks that automation can take care of or AI can take care of that are monotonous and repetitive and not so human, and the balance between the human piece?
I think I have, in enterprise sales anyway, I think in transactional sales, I think that marketing is going to take care of lead generation. And it's going to be too expensive to do lead generation using humans, right? So different kinds of automation are going to take care of as much of the sales funnel as possible in transactional sales.
Mm.
When it comes to consultative or enterprise sales, it's a little different. And if what you want to do in your lead generation process is to stand out, so I mentioned the problem with mail sequencing tools, and that just everybody just does the same thing. They're using these same kinds of tools, and they hope that just using the tool is going to give you the results, and that it doesn't matter how you use these tools. And so because people just end up doing the same thing, they don't stand out, and so they don't get the results they want. I spoke to a company, and by the way, there's also an argument that companies that are smaller, with small sales teams that may not have a sales development or business development rep, they are in trouble because if they can't find ways to automate their way out of things, then, and this is where the bad news for sellers comes in, at least this is what they perceive as bad news. Senior salespeople will need to do their own cold calling. And it's funny how senior salespeople, as they become senior, right? They become senior right after already when they've been in the game for 3 or 4 years. Then you start to see them get promoted into management positions, or senior sales or field sales roles, right? And so for those people, as soon as they start to become senior, they start to develop this interesting allergy to doing cold calling. It seems suddenly it's beyond, it's beneath them to do cold calling. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and so,
totally.
And so they don't do it. So, but the problem then is that nobody does it. Nobody does the top end of the sales funnel. And if nobody does the top end of the sales funnel, then companies end up with a problem, right? At the bottom end of the sales funnel, because, then you don't win anything. So, if you only have a couple of senior salespeople as in your sales team, those salespeople need to create their own leads. And one of the ways that they can stand out, because they are senior, is by calling on their own leads, right? And start to develop their own relationships with buyers in their market space, so that they can eventually turn into customers. Senior sellers don't necessarily want to hear this, because they don't want to do cold calling, because it is not comfortable. Largely, though, I think that is a question of mindset.
Mm.
And so somebody needs to go out and train these people on having the right kind of mindset towards what happens in my own mind and what should happen in the mind of my prospective customer when I give them a call, or when I turn up in the email inbox or their LinkedIn inbox. Is that me disturbing them, or is that me helping their business grow? Right.
I love it.
And if you take that latter stance, then you become of value to customers, and they should be happy that you call. Right? They can say no, sure, no problem, but they can't be irritated that you called, because you used your valuable senior time to try to provide them with advice about how they can potentially grow their business and become a stronger business for it. And that is something that it's pretty hard to be angry about.
Absolutely. And I would argue that receiving an email from a senior title is a bit more, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to discredit SDRs. I mean, I've been one and have worked with so many and built those teams over the years. But I think that when you do see a senior VP title or senior director or something, right, like a more senior title reach out, there's just, for at least for the folks who understand the industry, maybe particularly selling to sales and marketing teams, there might be a more of a curiosity from the prospect's perspective to say, oh, all right, I'm seeing a senior person reach out, and obviously assuming that their message is well crafted, then for me that adds a little more seriousness, perhaps.
Yes. Yeah. Or that they get a call from somebody, and that call is followed up by an email saying, I tried to give you a ring, and it didn't get through. When can we talk?
Yeah, totally.
So, and maybe also not immediately, but I mean, this is turning into I'm really starting to tear it apart. But what you see very, very quickly with a lot of people who do lead generation, of course, now, is that they are very, very quick to spill their beans, right? They very quickly use their sales pitch, and maybe they should wait and instead have a conversation with the customer on their terms, listening and learning what they care about before they start pitching something that they have no idea whether the customer is seeing as a problem. They have no idea whether that's already been solved, if it's going to be a priority at all once one sees it as a problem, and so on and so forth. So people are very, very quick to come up with a pitch, where what they should do is they should first read the room, figure out what's going on, and then if they know they have a shot, then take it. If you don't have a shot, why waste it? Why shoot from 100 yards out if it makes no sense.
Totally. Well, Jacob, thank you so much for being on the show once again. Always putting up with my requests and taking time out of your busy schedule. So I appreciate it. Thank you, my friend.
This was fun. Thanks a lot. Yeah,
absolutely. And if folks wanted to maybe learn more about your sales, or maybe, get in contact with you, follow you on social, what are the best URLs or handles to reach you?
I think they should go over and just for fun, they should go over and chat with the bot at yoursales.com. But they can also reach out to me on LinkedIn, and my contact information is also over at yoursales.com. So I'm pretty easy to find. Just Google my name and see what comes up.
Awesome.
But LinkedIn is good, and the sales bot over at yoursales.com is an interesting, a small interesting test to AI.
Awesome. Well, listen, have a wonderful, wonderful day, and hope to see you soon.
Likewise, man. Have a good one. Happy selling.
Absolutely. Take care.
You too.